So welcome everyone to the Smith.ai Master Series. It's our monthly webinar series where we talk with industry leaders, specifically to small business owners, medium business owners, and law firm owners as to ways that they can operate more sustainable, more profitable businesses and law firms, and different tips and tricks that they can employ specifically with sales and marketing, so that way they can have much more better business and uh, really build teams and build their tech stacks out so that way they have more profitability built into their operations. So today we have a wonderful guest. We have Matt Spiegel from Lawmatics, the CEO of Lawmatics. And today we're going to be talking about how to run a more profitable law firm, looking beyond the practice of law. We know that there's fantastic lawyers out there, but when you're running a law firm, there's much more involved in that than just actually being a good lawyer. And that's what we're going to talk about and dig into today. So Matt, thank you for joining us. I'll turn it over to you. Let's do a brief introduction on your end about you and Lawmatics, and then we'll dive into some Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. And really appreciate you guys having me on. And looking forward to talking to everybody. Yeah, my name is Matt Spiegel. I am the founder and CEO currently of Lawmatics. Kind of the CRM and marketing automation platform for law firms. And in my former life, I was an attorney. And then I was also the founder and former CEO of MyCase. One of the bigger practice management companies out there. So that was my first entry into the legal tech world, and I've been stuck here ever since.
So Matt, what made you get into legal tech after actually practicing law? That was something I was personally curious about when I read your background and bio.
Yeah. So the story goes basically, I started my own law firm, and shortly after starting my own law firm, I actually had I had a bar complaint. One of the clients that came with me from my old law firm complained, and it wasn't that and it's actually funny, right? It ties into kind of my topic, which is like, or the concept of like good lawyering is just not enough, right? And so this was not a complaint about me being a bad lawyer. This was not a complaint about, me mishandling their case. It was simply, you didn't call me back quick enough, in my opinion. And so it was all about attorney-client communication. And so I thought to myself, man, like this guy, all he wants is basic information about his case. Like I was doing criminal defense.
Mhm.
And so I was like, I got to build a better way for lawyers and clients to communicate with each other. So we ended up building this client portal, the first client portal. And then we got feedback, and that client portal ended up becoming the MyCase practice management system that you know today. So it really just started off as that one little idea and a bar complaint, which spurned it all on.
So this topic is very near and dear to your heart, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it definitely is. Definitely is.
All right, so for anybody that's attending, if you have any questions, just type them in the chat or the Q&A function at any point. I'll try to work both of my screens here and catch those questions and feed them to Matt, and we can either answer them in real time or we'll save them to the end. But we'll certainly get to all your questions. So Matt, first question from me. So you finished law school and you're wide-eyed, bushy tails, you're excited to practice law. When do a lot of lawyers finally come to the realization that practicing law is actually only a very small portion of their day-to-day? I think the stat out there is only 2.5 hours of a normal workday is actually billable legal work. There's business development, there's admin, there's disruptions and phone calls and client communication that make up the greater portion. You're doing more of that than actually practicing law. When did they come to that realization? What do they do about it from there?
Yeah, so I think it depends, right? It depends on what you're doing. So if you've got the fresh out of law school, young lawyer who wants to go work at a big law firm, right? And they go take a junior associate role at a mid-size or a larger firm. And the realization for them almost, may never come in the same way that it does for the solo and small law firm sort of entrepreneurs, right? It's a total different experience, somebody who does that versus somebody who goes and works at a much smaller law firm or starts their own law firm. I think if the experience I went through being at a large law firm for like 4 years, everything was handed to me, right? All I had to do was manage my clients. All I had to do was go to court, represent them, let them know what was happening, and the rest would take care of itself, right? And so I then started my own law firm, and it was then that I, came to the realization that, like, okay, wait a second, I got to do a lot more than actually just manage my clients or show up to court at this point. Then it became, oh, I got to worry about, like, I got to pay, I got to have an office. I got to have all the details that go into running an actual business. I got to, file articles of incorporation. I've got to, like, get insurance. I've got to get all the different things that are, like, I never was thinking about. All I was thinking about was being a good lawyer. So the point which the realization comes is just different for everybody. But I think everybody does have the realization at some point. It's just a matter of what route you're going. Are you going the small or starting your own law firm route? And if you're at a bigger law firm and maybe you haven't realized this yet, I think the sooner you realize that being a lawyer, having a law firm is a service industry like any other service industry, and you treat it as such, then you're going to be better off, right? The sooner you can realize that, the better off you'll be.
So whether or not you're fresh out of law school and this happens right away, or whether or not you've been, operating your own practice for a decade, 2 decades, whatever the case is, when you come to that realization that there's got to be a better way out there. There's got to be a way for me to reduce this admin time and reduce all this clutter and be able to free myself up to spend more time doing what I want to be doing. How do they hit the reset button and begin on a new path?
Yeah, I mean, so that's a good question. I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, um, it's understanding what you're trying to get out of your business, right? That's like the first question that you have to ask yourself as a lawyer slash now business person, right? What is the outcome you want, right? Are you starting your law firm, or is the purpose of the small firm that you're at, is it to provide a better lifestyle for yourself, right? Is it to provide more time with your family, right? Or is it to maximize revenue? Is it to, like, just pile on and just build this thing as big as you possibly can, for whatever, to whatever end you're trying to get that towards, right? So the first step is really understanding, like, what success looks like. I think that's where a lot of people, they make a misstep, right? Is they think, all right, I need to do a reset. I need to, embark down this path of success, but they don't actually define what success is. Or they simply default to, well, success is just making more money. That's not always the case, right? A lot of people, I know plenty of people that, the success for them is actually not making any more money at all. It's freeing up their time, right? So I think that's the first part. Define what success looks like. Once you've defined what success looks like, then it becomes a lot easier to embark down that path. And then it's just understanding, like, well, what do you need to do? If it's, if your goal is to just afford yourself more time, well, then you need to think about, well, how do I do that? Right? How can I leverage technology? How can I leverage whatever else is out there to help me just reduce the amount of time that I have to spend in my business? And if your goal is to just actually make more money and get more business, well, then, okay, I got to start figuring out how to grow. I got to start thinking about it from a marketer's perspective. I got to start thinking about, well, where are my customers? Where do they come from? Right? How do I get them? And go down that path. So again, you define what success is, and then it becomes very easy to at least start down whatever path you need to go down.
All right, let's dig into the second part of it. Let's assume that the goal isn't necessarily to just make more money, it's to free up time, which we know inevitably can also lead to more money if it's done right. Is it possible to lean on partners in technology in a way where all of that admin and all of that non-legal, non-billable work can be taken care of, externally by partners in tech?
Yeah. So, look, I think at the end of the day, the world in which we live now is one in which you can't actually do what you would need to do as a good business without the help of technology or other support mechanisms. I truly believe that. I don't think you could have a maximally successful law firm without technology playing a role. And I say that because you'll get people who say, well, I have a very successful law firm and I don't use any technology. And my answer to that is, that's great, but you could be more successful if you did use technology, right? So, tech now, and obviously like, you've got the dawn of AI and things that are really designed, in automation, things that are just specifically designed to really enhance the ability for you to focus on actually being a lawyer and focus less on the administrative or the business side of the law firm. If you're not taking advantage of them, then the issue becomes you're not only maximizing the opportunity for your business, but you're also falling behind other businesses that are leveraging those same tools to a greater benefit. Right. So it's like you lose twofold. You're not maximizing your own profitability or your own time, but you're also losing to another law firm that is. You're being left behind is what ultimately happens.
Do you think that most law firm owners are seeing other law firms in their community, in their space, within their practice areas as competition and trying to emulate what they're doing from a tech and marketing standpoint?
And
Or
we
are
do
they
see that.
just kind of heads
No, we
down and not really
definitely,
focusing?
I mean, I've seen this for years and we see it more so now than anything, than any other. I think, what's interesting is like, we'll talk to some customers and sometimes, customers will say like, hey, I've got a lot of people I would love to tell about Lawmatics, but honestly, it's a competitive advantage and I don't want them knowing about it. Right. Like we hear that. Right. And I get it because it's a competitive industry. And like, if you have something that is a competitive advantage and you think that that other people don't necessarily know about it, then hell yeah, you're going to keep that to yourself. Right. I get it. That's what we're in the business of doing. Right. We're in the business of building a business. But beyond that, I think you have those specific circumstances, but generally speaking, coming back is I think lawyers are pretty good about sharing what how they function, what they do. I mean, there's some really great communities out there that have a ton of lawyers sharing thoughts, sharing ideas on how to leverage technology and how to make it work best for the business side of your law firm, the process side of your law firm. And I think that there are a lot of attorneys out there that leverage those groups and that advice from people and significantly enhance the experience that they deliver.
So let's go back to where a lot of lawyers and law firms are spending their time when it's not billable, it's not legal work. I kind of put a general umbrella as administrative and overhead. You talk to lawyers all day, every day. You did practice, law yourself. Let's get a little more specific. Where are those pain points? What are they spending that time on where they can realize, hey, I shouldn't be working on this. This needs to be corrected. This needs to be, offloaded from my plate.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, look, there's a lot of like, your basic administrative stuff that we would all know, right? Whether it's like organization, filing, just sort of, yeah, I mean, phone calls, just keeping clients abreast of what's going on in their matter. Now that, most of the time that can be billable, but it's still like kind of administrative, tedious work, right? That just takes up a lot of time. But I think it's not as much about where they're spending time as much as it is about where they're wasting time. And I think that's what we see a lot is we see a lot of lawyers who say, well, I'm spending most of my time going out trying to drum up new business. And then you talk to them about how that's working out for them and it's not working out well. Right. And so they're trying to spend time on building their client book, on bringing business into their law firm. But they're not typically being very successful at it. And that's what we see a lot.
Obviously, we're a virtual receptionist solution. We know that us being leveraged to answer calls and answer chats can make a huge difference. You come from the world of practice management solutions and CRM. How, when you're dealing with clients that are still using pen and paper and you're trying to get them to migrate over to CRM, and CRM has got to be, the biggest difference maker when it comes to technology, and not even just in the legal space, in any space. I think if you're selling and marketing and managing, how do you help those folks that really have no knowledge of CRM get to a point where they're comfortable kind of going from something so traditional and so antiquated to some of these newer tools that you need to introduce them to and get them comfortable and familiar with.
Yeah, so it's a challenge, right? One of the things I think, that's great about Smith is like everyone knows, the value of a receptionist, right? The value of someone answering the phone, right? Which is, like Smith provides the value of like engagement, like immediately, right? Which we all know is super valuable. I mean, I remember when I started my law firm, I spent like $30 on practice management a month and a couple other bucks here and there. And then I spent $800 a month on my answering service. It was the most important tool that I had because answering that phone when I'm in court all day was my lifeblood, right? Like that is what supported me. With the idea of a CRM and marketing automation, you're talking about a population of, lawyers, and I am one, so I can say it, but we're slow on the uptake, right? We are very late traditionally to adopt technology. That's been, documented and proven many times over. And, it's an education process. Like, we have to, it's a quick education, but it's the idea that like helping lawyers understand that your entire business effectively is based off of relationships, right? It is not, and this is where it's like, the idea of good lawyering isn't enough really comes from, is like, it doesn't matter if you're a great lawyer. Like you can be a great lawyer, but if you suck at providing a good client experience, even if you deliver a great outcome, those clients are not going to necessarily refer you to other people who need services in the same way that they would if you provided an excellent experience, right? There are plenty of good lawyers out there, right? And the opposite is true. You can be a mediocre lawyer, right? And maybe not deliver as good of an outcome as the next guy. But if you provide an amazing client experience, right, you can be very, very, very successful. And so it's about getting lawyers to understand that the relationships are what drive your business. It's everything. It's not the outcome, it's the relationship itself. And when you start to think about it that way, then all of a sudden you understand what a CRM is, right? And you start to look through almost everything with a different lens because you start to think about it in terms of like customer service and just providing an excellent client experience at every step of the journey, like not just in as it relates to the lawyering in the case, but
Give me
like,
some examples of what that would be. What advice do you typically give to lawyers in order to provide a better customer experience?
yeah.
And what do
So
you mean
first of
by that?
all, so first of all, we tell people, look, you need to break it down into like the three phases of the client relationship, the client journey. And we break it down into three phases. You can break it down into more, but we look at it as phase one is that intake phase, right? So it's like the moment that they've reached out to you until the moment they hire your law firm, right? That is phase one of the relationship. Phase two, they've hired you, right? Now you're representing them on a matter. And phase three is you're done representing them. And now they are a former client. And that arguably is the most important phase of the entire relationship because that's the part that lasts in perpetuity. But every phase of that relationship, there are opportunities to delight your customer, your client, right? Whether it's delighting them with communication or experience or outcome, whatever. There are many different ways to delight them, but you have to do it at every phase. And so you break it down into each phase and you start to think about, well, what am I doing to really provide an amazing experience? And when I say an amazing experience, I mean the same thing as like, what gives you joy about in the experience at your favorite restaurant? Because I bet you that it's more than just the food. It's more than just the product that you get. It's like the experience you get there. It's like, oh, the staff is amazing. They're so nice. They take care of me. Like they know my needs, right? You start thinking about it in terms of that, right? Or like you go to your doctor or you go to freaking Trader Joe's, right? Like you get an amazing experience that you go to Trader Joe's. It's not always just about the product. So you start thinking about your law firm through those lens and you start to see all the different opportunities that you can really delight that client at different phases of their journey with you.
I think most people can probably appreciate the importance of immediacy and picking up the phone, responding quickly, taking that consultation, giving them the answers to the questions, things that come before that they're hired, right? And they're taken on as a client. They can probably understand even a little bit about what type of things that they need to do to meet their, a high level of experience when they're a client. But you put an emphasis on the third phase because that is the longest phase. They don't always have a need for legal services. Let's dig into that a little bit, and how can they provide a better experience after they've already been a client, when you really want them to be an ambassador for you and be helping generate word of mouth referral business for
That's
you.
right. That's right. If you look, it's about 75% of all business at all law firms come from referrals, right? So if you have a client and their case is over and you say to them, hey, it's been great helping you, great getting to know you. Please send me if you have anybody else that needs a lawyer in the future, let us know. And you send them on their way and that's it. You are leaving so much business on the table, right? That person who then meets somebody who needs a lawyer 5 years later is not going to remember you, right? It's a relationship. When I just spoke about a CRM and how it's getting lawyers to understand that these are about relationships. This is the example. You know, you have a relationship with that person that doesn't end when the case is over. And so, one thing we recommend everybody does is have a year-long drip campaign set up when a case is over. And a drip campaign, for those of you that don't know, is just basically like, it's a sequence of communication touch points that are basically automated, that are scheduled to go out when an event happens. So in this situation, the event would be the case is closed, right? Whatever, you're done representing them, whatever type of law you practice. Most cases, there's like an end time, right? You've got a year's worth of communication, maybe, an email that says thank you, whatever, a closing email. And then a month later, you send them another check-in email, see how they're doing, see if they have any questions. And then another month goes by, and now you send them an email, and now you ask them for a review on a review site. And then maybe you wait 2 months, and maybe now you schedule a little call. Maybe Smith.ai calls them, right? Maybe you have some sort of tickler in there that just says, hey, reach out to this person with a phone call. And so on and so forth over the course of a year. So maybe there's 6, 7 communication points over the course of the year. But what happens at the end of that year? Well, they still know your name real well, right? They're not thinking about the representation you gave them. They're thinking about, man, like, he's been pinging me. He's been keeping me up to date. He's been checking in on me, wanting to know what's going on. They've answered some questions for me. She's responded to anything that I've needed to get. It's really been a great experience after the case is over. And now you're top of mind. So now someone else needs a lawyer, right? They're going to recommend you. And then after that year, right, it's newsletters. It's my favorite one. You can't, we're not in a room full of people, so I can't see hands, but I always ask people, like, how many people here have more than 500 former clients, right? And I bet most people in this room right now have more than 500 former clients. And so then I ask everybody is like, are you sending them all a message on their birthday? And almost everybody's going to put their hands down, right? And they're going to be like, well, how the hell do you expect us to send a message to all 2,000 of my former clients on their birthday? I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to use technology to do that, right? A good CRM, a good marketing automation platform is going to let you, load up all of your contacts, all of your clients, your former clients, and say, hey, I want to send them this email on their birthday. And you wish them a great happy birthday. That should happen every year. This is blocking and tackling. This is marketing 101. But you stay top of mind. And 10 years from now, they're still getting that email from you birthday, and they still remember you being their lawyer. Someone else needs a lawyer. Guess who they're going to recommend? They're going to recommend you because they're still thinking about you. It is really critical. This is a relationship. You might represent somebody who's 18 years old, 19 years old. They may know somebody that needs a lawyer 20 years later, 30 years later. You want to be that person.
All it takes is a little upfront work to coordinate that inside of your automation tool as well. You just reminded me of a story. I sent a box of cookies. It was just a Christmas gift when I worked in agency to a contact of mine. He brought it up 5 years later. I forgot that I even sent it to him. That was how big of an impact it made where 5 years later he's still thinking about this box of cookies I sent on Christmas for him. And those are the things that create little memorable moments. And all of that can be queued up inside of your tool. A tool
Yeah,
like postal.io works hand in hand with automation tools where you can actually take it from a birthday message to an actual gift, a real live tangible gift. So there's
yeah,
technology out there that makes that possible, where you can
totally.
really create delightful experiences.
Totally. And there's actually I just saw that there's a question and it's kind of relevant to the discussion right now. So if it's cool, Tom, I'll read it off and answer it.
Yeah.
The question was that someone says, I never found dealing with chatbots or virtual assistants improving my relationship with a company that uses such. In fact, it irritates the hell out of me. From a customer service experience, it is horrendous. What am I missing here? So one is I will say, be very careful about um, equating your experience with other companies with what your clients might experience with your own. I want to just put that out there because I've fallen into that trap more often than I could say, where I'm like, well, you know what? I'm my customer and I don't like it. And so my customers aren't going to like it. And you can get burned that way. Right. But that being said, I think there is a time and a place for every tool, right? So in your business, in your practice, it may be that a virtual assistant, or if it's AI driven, right? It sounds like maybe you're talking about something that's really AI driven, like more of a chatbot. And the function of that chatbot could just be the fact that its programmer or its owner just didn't put valuable information in there, right? You can make that what you want, but I would be willing to bet that there's a use case where it could help you. And it may be limited for you. You may want to utilize other tools beyond that, but I can almost guarantee you that there is some part of the process where it can be very helpful, not only to you in a time savings, but also to the end client. So again, I would just be very careful about your experience with them and then assuming that that's going to be the experience that your clients have as well.
Yeah, I'll add to that as well because I feel like I have to, being from Smith.ai. So we deal with these type of questions all the time when we go to especially events, and we talk face to face with potential clients. And a lot of times they have been burned by, poorly executed, poorly chosen virtual assistants or virtual receptionists in the past. And that's why one of the first couple questions they ask us is, are we AI only? Which we're not. We have human receptionists. And they ask where are our agents based out of, because a lot of times they're using a company that offshores that, and it's folks that don't necessarily speak very good English and can't handle the questions that come from a law firm audience. And those are the things that we excel really well in, and we offer a much better experience than a lot of the lower grade options that they may have experienced in the past. So certainly a valid question, because that is something that comes up all the time when we speak with potential clients. But certainly appreciate the concerns, and know that there are other options out there that can elevate that customer experience for you. Okay, let's get back on track, man. If there's any other questions that come up, feel free to pop them in the Q&A, just like the one that came up there. So when we're talking about technology, I read a stat recently: 69% of law firms are still not using AI in their practices. What do you think about that stat? And do you think that it's going to be very slow adoption before that number improves, and there's more widespread adoption amongst law firms using AI? And how should they be using AI in
Yeah.
your opinion?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of the topic of the day, right? I'm not surprised by the number of law firms not using AI. I think that we are an inherently, like I said, we are late adopters traditionally. I think we have an inherent aversion to AI. I think there's a subset of lawyers that are worried about AI, both for their own, value and also for its efficacy in whatever they decide to use it for. Um, there are different there are different flavors of AI, right? Like, and I think it's important to understand that. Like, for example, in Lawmatics, we built AI and we built it very, very surface level. And what I mean by that is it's very safe. It is like in Lawmatics, you can use AI to help you generate email content. Like that's it, right? Like just, hey, I'm not a marketer. I don't know how to write a good drip campaign email, something to send to my clients after their case is over. So help me write that. That's very like surface level, like basic chat GPT stuff
Mhm.
that we can kind of build in. Now, the deepest of levels is like taking the data that we have around a law firm and like letting them use that data inside of an AI model to really understand like their own clients and their own activities and like what makes a good case and what makes a bad case and things like that. And then there are many, many, many steps in between, right? I think it would be silly for lawyers to not at least use the surface level AI at this point, right? It can just help with so many things. I mean, there's a million tools out there that are like, they're not even legal. It's just, it's just cool stuff that helps you do things quicker, right? Whether it's like, you know, making videos, making content, reviewing documents, kind of like being a companion, a co-pilot for drafting legal documents, things like that. It's incredibly valuable. I, look, I'm a technologist. I own and start tech companies. So I'm big on the AI, but I understand people's trepidation. I really do, right? I think most of us know the story of a couple of lawyers who used AI to draft a brief and they ended up getting disbarred, right? Because, well, I mean, they ended up getting disbarred because they doubled down on the lie that they told the court in relation to the brief. But it's a scary thing to think about, like your data, right? Like as a tech company, the data that you have with us, it's not ours, right? It's yours. It's your data. Like we're just stewards of it, at the moment that it's with us, but it is your data. And so the idea, I get it. I get the trepidation around having that data be used to, teach an AI model about whatever subject we want to teach them about. But there is going to be incredible value coming from things just like that. And I think it's on us as the technology companies to ensure that we do things in a way that is going to protect the integrity of our clients' data. And I know here at Lawmatics, like we haven't figured out the best way to do that yet. And so we haven't done it, right? Like we won't do that until we can be assured that we're not using our clients' data in any way that they wouldn't want or that they haven't accepted. But this is going to happen and it is going to be, a profound change. And like when we back up and we start thinking about, well, how do I hit the reset button? How do I map my course to success? Well, we're going to have a much better roadmap if we can look at like, oh, well, here are all the law firms that have done exactly what I've done in the same place, right? And how they've been successful. Now I've got a beautiful blueprint laid out right in front of me, right? So like the effects of that are going to be profound. But just right on its surface now, how you can use AI to just be more efficient, to save so much time, and to automate so many of these things that we've talked about that can be automated, you would be missing out if you didn't do it.
Yeah, I think documentation and transcriptions are probably the number one ways that lawyers are using it. At ABA Tech Show, I think all of the companies on Startup Alley were AI driven or had something to do with AI. And then I think like 9 out of the 11 were specifically related to documentation and transcription. So there's definitely a huge value in it. And I don't want folks to feel like they're, incredibly behind because like I said, 69% are not using it. But at minimum, you got to start reading more about it. You got to start having conversations with colleagues and start understanding how they might be using it to get more comfortable and get to a point where you could be deploying these type of tools soon if you haven't already, because you will be left behind at some point or another if you don't make the leap and adopt some of these tools. There's another question that came in. Let's read this so that way it doesn't kind of fall behind. Representing clients in court supervised cases like estate matters, family law, often brings challenges with scheduling court appearances and monitoring case status. What strategies can be employed to give amazing client experiences despite delays and awaiting court directives?
Yeah. So like it's interesting, right? Because to me, this is like, okay, so you're honing in on phase two of the relationship, right? Like this is you're representing somebody. And to me, the best way to delight during the actual case, besides the outcomes, is communication. It is when you think you've communicated enough, communicate more, and then communicate more on top of that, right? And technology is really probably the only way that you can do this in a way that would be at the volume that they're going to need, whether it's using like, an automated communication service. I know like actually Smith does some stuff like this as far as I know. But that's where there's value, right? Just like every little opportunity. I mean, honestly, you can use technology to have a touch point every single day. There may be nothing going on in their case, and they may be, they're just sitting there waiting, right? And you may think, well, okay, all I'm doing is sending them another email that says, hey, sorry, still waiting on this. It might be another week. And then the next day, hey, still waiting on this. Just wanted to let you know. Like, you may think it's overkill, but I want to remind you of something. This is a very important like takeaway that I think sometimes we lose sight of as lawyers, especially when we're trying to, we're managing a lot of cases and we've got a lot of clients. This is another client to you, right? You maybe have 100 or 200, whatever. But to that client, this is the most important thing that is happening in their lives, almost assuredly. In almost every type of law, them needing you is the most important thing. And you're talking right now about court supervised cases like estate matters and family law. Well, obviously, in family law, that is the most important thing happening in their life. So you need to remember that to you, it's just another client. I mean, hopefully it's more than that, but it's just another client. To them, it's the most important thing happening in their life. And if you think about it that way, then you start to realize, all right, if I just have an email going out to them, if they're hearing from me in some way every day, they just feel comforted, right? And it's a really good way to just delight them at every step.
I love that perspective. It's so true. Just being on the receiving end as a client myself, with in a couple different instances, that's the best way to put it. And even an update with no news, it's still an update, and it makes a big difference.
That's right.
Awesome. Let me ask one or two more questions. Then there's questions from guests that are starting to come in, and I think we'll probably write out the rest of the time with some of those coming in. So besides AI, what's the biggest, most notable type of trend that you're seeing in the space that should be called out here that can make a difference for law firms that are trying to operate more profitably?
Automation, automation, automation. I mean, that's it. It's not just AI, right? Because automation has been around for a lot longer than AI, and automation is like really taking your specific process and automating it. But this is the trend. I mean, I think this is like the biggest trend. This is probably a bigger trend than AI actually, and especially in the sense that AI kind of straddles that line of automation as well in a lot of ways. But the automation, like what it can do, like automating your standard processes, automating communications, automating, drafting of documents. There's a lot of systems out there that will help you automate your time entries and your invoices and all that stuff now. Is like, technology has become so smart and so valuable and just so good that it can do the things for you, right? And like, so we talk about good lawyering isn't enough. But what would be awesome would be if you did have more time to focus on being as good a lawyer as you possibly can be. And these automation platforms allow you to get all that time back and to actually focus on being a good lawyer. It's really impossible to do, I think, this day and age without it.
There's definitely a blurry line that exists between automation and AI because a lot of automation tools use AI, but I think there's much more comfort in pure automation tools because it's much more easy to understand. I input this and then there is this output. It's much more linear, it's much more straightforward. And I think there's a comfort in that and being able to both build automated processes and feeling more comfortable with what's taking place rather than, all these buzzwords with large language models and neuro whatever that they compare it to your brain and all these things that are in the buzzy AI space.
I don't love, like, I think automation is starting to become a bit synonymous with AI, and I don't love that because they are not the same thing, right? And I like automation, like the way we use automation is like, look, you go and build your automations. They're hands-on. You like say, okay, when a client does this, I want to do this and I want to do that. And I want to, you just program it and then you just know that it's running, right? I'll tell you the other thing that automation does for you as a law firm, which is really, really important. We're talking about like, you've talked a little bit about growing your law firm and like, if you're going to do marketing, if you're going to go spend any money to get new business, I would never tell anybody to spend any money on anything related to marketing unless they can measure the effect that it has, right? You have to have KPIs, you have to have reporting, you have to have all of this in order to make decisions. You can't just go spend money on marketing and think, well, I'm just going to know if it works. You're not going to know, right? And then you could just be throwing money down a black hole. So you need to have good data. Well, guess what automation does? Automation gives you data normalization. So what that means is, and I'll give you, this sounds silly, but trust me, this kind of shit happens all the time to people. But like, imagine you want to go pull a report, you want to build a custom report, and you want to see the difference, like all right, I want to see how much I've billed or how much new business has come from these 3 states that I work in, right? I work in California, Nevada, and Arizona. Okay. Well, so how are you going to do that? Well, you're going to go and build a report and you're going to group it by the field in your system called state, right? Well, how did people enter in state? Did they enter in CA for California, or did they enter in California? Or did they enter in Cali? Did they enter in AZ? Did they capitalize AZ? Did they write Arizona, right? How did they enter that in? So now you could have somebody who's wrote in California as their state or wrote in CA as their state. And if you go build a report and you search for one, you're not going to get the other. So it's a very basic example, but it shows you what I mean by data normalization. And what automation can do is ensure that the data is the same every single time it's entered into for a particular instance. And you never have to worry about these reporting issues. It's a really, really important thing to consider.
It's going to bring us full circle as to how we started this conversation too, because if you're tracking and you're running reports and you're realizing that there's issues here, it begs the importance of starting with a plan and starting with your goal, building a plan, knowing what you need to track, knowing what you need to capture, what that data should look like, and then building your automations to kind of work everything in between. So that way it's a nice cohesive system and you're able to measure your metrics at the end against your goals that you started from the beginning. And that's where this whole plan really becomes important and really is the crux of being able to run a more profitable firm. So a couple more questions have come in as we've been chatting here. What is the best way to provide a great experience for leads who want to know the cost of the case before paying for a consultation?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And that's a little bit subjective, right? I think you need to understand the type of practice that you're in and to understand it, right? If it's personal injury, you're gonna be like, look, I have no idea. There's no cost to you, right? We take a contingency, right? If you're like a pretty strict flat fee, like criminal defense firm, that's what I did. Then like, well, look, we have a kind of a fee structure. If it's this, it's that. And I think you should not be afraid to give somebody an idea of how much it's going to cost, but I do think you want to be very careful and make sure they understand that like every single case is a little different, right? You don't have any, you don't know what it is until you really get into it. So unless you have a really strict fee schedule, like, a la carte services, and this is what you get and this is what you pay for it. And if you do have that, I think you should be super transparent about pricing. People love transparency when it comes to pricing. But if you can't be that transparent, then I would be very careful in giving a ballpark because you don't want to mess that up. You want to be as honest and transparent as you can. So I think like transparency over everything. And sometimes that means actually not sharing pricing because the transparent truth is that it just varies so much. And if I were to give you a price right now, it would just be totally inappropriate because then I just have no idea. I don't know enough about your matter yet, right? So I think you have to err on the side of transparency, and sometimes that means not giving much information. Tom, I think you're muted.
Thanks, Matt.
There we go.
11% of billable time goes unpaid. That's another stat that's out there. How can lawyers do a better job of getting paid for the work that they've put into these cases?
Yeah. I mean, That's like the age-old question, right? And there are definitely tools out there to help you capture more of the time that you're spending doing things. But honestly, like, and I know someone even asked a question about which ones do you love here. I don't know of any that are really great, like the auto time capture stuff.
Mhm,
I mean,
mhm.
I really don't, so I can't really speak to any of them. But I think using automation, you'd be surprised at just how much you can remind yourself of, or how much you can kind of keep track of. Because it's sometimes those little things. It's like, I forgot to bill for like writing an email, or you just start doing those things, right? But if you build them into a workflow, which is like, well, this is actually sending the email, or this is sending me a task to do the email. And then you have something else programmed that's like, after this task is done, send me a task to bill for it, right? It's just something automated. So you're going to have all these tasks for yourself, but at least it's going to guarantee that you are aware of it, and that you're remembering that, oh crap, there's some other stuff I need to bill for. It's not taking you any time to make the reminders for yourself because they're automated, right? That's the beauty.
If anyone has any burning questions for Matt, pop them in the chat or the Q&A. We have a few more minutes here. Another question that came in: what AI websites would you recommend? And I know that's pretty broad, but that's the question. So if there's any that you or your team or your clients have heard about, that have seen, that have worked well for their law firms, let's give them a shout out.
Yeah, I honestly, there's not anything that like really, really sticks out in my head at this point. Like there's really cool ones for like, creating decks and like PowerPoint presentations, but that's not like super relevant to lawyers. Um, at the end of the day, like I just like using ChatGPT, and
Mhm.
I like using it I actually tend to use it to build stuff. So whether it's maybe it's a process I want to automate, right? I actually like having ChatGPT like engineer for me. Like give me code that I can use to like connect two systems together, or to work with an API, or to do something like that. I also really love ChatGPT for analyzing uh, and working with Excel spreadsheets. I suck at Excel. Um, I'm not good with formulas there. And I've used it for so many years, and I still suck at it. I love that I can go and use Chat GPT and just be like, hey, I've got this column and I want to do X, Y, Z, and I want to like split it, and I want to analyze this and build all that. Give me the formula for it, and it just gives it to me. Like that is incredibly valuable. And like as a law firm, you start to analyze your data, start to look at KPIs, like those types of things can become really valuable. So I'm just a Chat GPT guy, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I've been using it quite a bit too. If you are doing your own marketing, your own social media, your own email marketing, really great for providing you with a framework for emails, for social posts, for blog posts, for landing page copy. It's really good for ideation if you're trying to create content for your site or for clients. And obviously, it needs to be dressed up. It needs to be massaged. I would never recommend pulling it right out of ChatGPT and hitting send, but it can be really good from a marketer standpoint.
Yeah.
And I'm doing another webinar. I think it's next month maybe, with a documentation AI tool called gavel.io, and
Yeah.
I'll
Gavel's
give
great.
that
Yeah.
a shout out as another AI tool. Cool. Another question: how do you do a drip campaign or a continuous communication if you have represented a client on an event like crime or CPS intervention, and they don't want to be reminded of that negative time in their life?
Yeah. So this is what I did, right? I did criminal defense, and I will tell you, do not worry about that. Okay. They're not going to look at this as like, oh man, God, my attorney. They want to just know that everything is okay. They're going to have questions for you. And I'll give you another great example of a good drip campaign, or like a campaign in general for criminal defense, right? So in California, and I don't know what state you're in, Dana, but in California, for like misdemeanors, you can get them expunged from your record after 3 years, right? So what better campaign to build for your clients than a campaign that says 2.5 years after their conviction date, I want to send them an email and say, hey, guess what? it's me again. It's been a year and a half since we last spoke, whatever, but contact me because it might be time to go and get this thing off your record, right? Well, now what have you done? First of all, the client is going to be super stoked. They're going to be like, oh my God, this guy remembers me. Like he's reaching out to get this thing off my record. And guess what else you just got? You just got more revenue, right? You just got another client coming in the door. It's going to pay you $1,000, $1,500, whatever it is to do an expungement. So don't worry about that. You contacting them is not reminding them of a negative time in their life in the way that you think. They think of you as like the usher through this really tough time in their life. And they have a different regard for you. It's, you want it to, at the end of the day, actually be a positive thing that like when they hear from you, right? Like they think, oh man, this was such a hard time in my life and this person got me through it, helped get me through it. Right.
It really helps emphasize the importance of own data, right? You hear a lot of marketers talk about data as it exists, out there in the wild, wild west, like running Facebook ads. It's not your data. You're leveraging shared data, Facebook data. But if it's in your record, if it's in your database, in your CRM, these drip campaigns are so much more powerful than just generic programmatic ads that happen to be, shown to people as they're wandering about on the web. It can be so much more personalized, and you already know that you know that they know who you are, and they have positive, hopefully positive sentiments towards you and your brand. So those drip messages, those drip campaigns are infinitely more powerful than just a random ad that you might be running to a completely like unknown audience. So I completely second everything that Matt's been saying over the past hour here, that these drip campaigns and any form of email marketing and personalized marketing, goes a really, really long way. A couple more questions came in. What AI products work well for creating webinars for client education topics? Do you know any off the top of your head, Matt?
I don't. I mean, again, if you're creating a webinar and you want to do like decks and slides, right? I think it's like beautiful.ai. I think
Beautiful.ai. Yeah,
yeah,
beautiful.ai. Yeah, yeah,
is a
yeah.
really good one.
There was another one that I had conversations with that specifically was for webinars called sequel.io. Check that one out. I really liked that it not only facilitated the webinars, but it allowed you to build really clean landing pages with both past and future webinars and kind of a nice reel, almost like a blog. And people could go back and watch old webinars, and you can still use them as kind of gated content to be able to capture contact information and do email marketing in the future. So SQL is a really cool tool. Let's see. There's Ronald put some takeaways. Awesome. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, there's a couple people put some takeaways. It looks like an AI tool.
Otter.ai.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
otter.ai.
note-taking app. So yeah, it's been recording everything that we've been saying and just posted a summary of our notes. So let's call it a day here, Matt. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk about this topic that obviously is front and center and top of mind for so many different law firm owners and lawyers that are out there. And if they have any questions, I'm going to be sending a follow-up email right after this to anyone that attended, whether they attended live or if they just simply registered and weren't able to make it live. That'll have the playback link, and they'll have your contact information as well as information about Lawmatics. So Matt, appreciate the time, and thanks for all your rich insights that you're able to provide today.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. And thank you to everybody for hanging out with us today.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.